Welcome to Whole and Healthy Cooking with Chef Val. Hi, I'm Chef Valerie Wilson. I've been teaching healthy whole foods cooking classes for 27 years, and my website is macroval.com. Today, I'm going to teach you how to make one of my favorite Christmas cookie. It's a soft ginger cookie with icing, and it's right here in my holiday year-round cookbook. And so it's a soft ginger cookie and it's got an icing on it. I've been making this cookie since I was a little girl. When I was a little girl, I used to make cookies at Christmas time with my mom, and we had a few of our all-time favorite, and this was one of them. And then when I changed my diet about 30 years ago, I went all organic, whole foods, and vegan. I changed the ingredients and I created a healthy version of it. And also, the recipe today is going to be gluten-free. Okay? So when I make a cookie, I have the wet ingredients and I have the dry ingredients, and I have them separate. And I usually do the wet ingredients in a food processor. That's just so that all the ingredients get incorporated very well. You could also use a blender or any type of device that would mix up the the wet ingredients very thoroughly. All right. So we are going to start with the wet ingredients. I have 1/3 of a cup of some organic olive oil, and I am going to add 1/3 of a cup of brown rice syrup. So this is organic rice nectar, Suzanne specialty. That's my favorite brand of brown rice syrup. And if you've taken any of my cooking classes, you know how much I love brown rice syrup. Made from whole organic brown rice. So there's no chemical extraction process, there's no additives, nothing like that. It's just whole organic brown rice. And because it's a complex carbohydrate, a whole grain that makes this sweetener will never spike your blood sugar level, because the sugar that's in here is maltose, Maltose. Okay? Whole grain sweeteners give you maltose. Okay? Maltose is the least reactive there is. All right? So that's why I use brown rice syrup in all my desserts. Sometimes I use a combination, like we're going to do a combination for these cookies, but we want 2/3 of a cup of brown rice syrup. Now, your cooking tip is to use the same measuring cup for your olive oil as you do your brown rice syrup. So 1/3 of a cup of olive oil went in there first, and 2/3 of a cup of brown rice syrup is going in there now. And the reason why you do that is because brown rice syrup is sticky. So by putting it in the same measuring cup as the oil, the brown rice syrup won't stick to the measuring cup. Okay? So now we're going to pour that into the food processor, okay, along with 1/4 cup of an organic blackstrap molasses. Now, normally I don't use a molasses in my cooking because it's a sweeter than a brown rice syrup. Okay, so molasses does have some sucrose in it, but it's Christmas time, and I only make these cookies at Christmas. Okay, and so it's like a specialty. Now, organic blackstrap molasses does have some vitamins and minerals to it, so there is some redeeming value to it. Okay, so it's not white refined sugar, which has no nutritional value whatsoever. Blackstrap molasses, this is unsulfured because it's organic, right? So you want to make sure you get an organic one so there's no sulfur in there. Okay, and I'm going to use 1/4 cup. And your cooking tip is to use that same measuring cup that had that olive oil in it so the molasses doesn't stick. Molasses is even more sticky than brown rice syrup. Now, if you are cooking for someone who has blood sugar issues, you could not use the blackstrap molasses. You can just use straight brown rice syrup. So I would use 2/3 of a cup plus 1/4 cup of brown rice syrup. The molasses gives the ginger cookie just a very rich flavor. like a robust flavor, like a flavor you remember when you were a kid. That's why I add the molasses to it, okay? And again, it's Christmas time. It's a special cookie. I only make this cookie at Christmas time, so I'm going, with the molasses. And then we want 1/3 of a cup of a non-dairy beverage. I like my rice beverage, but you could use an oat, you could use an almond, whatever your favorite non-dairy beverage is. You want 1/3 of a cup, and that's going to go in there like so. And I'm going to put a pinch of sea salt in there also. Why am I doing that? Because cookies are sweet, okay? They're yin, and so the salt is yang, and so I'm balancing the yin and the yang, but also that pinch of sea salt brings out the flavor and makes it more flavorful, okay? That's what salt is. It just brings out the natural flavor of what's already there, makes it more flavorful. We're going to put a lid on the food processor, and then whenever I do liquid in my food processor, I put a cloth over the top so in case it jumps up, it doesn't spill out all over the place. So I'm going to turn that on, and we're going to puree. That's good enough. You just want it to be thoroughly incorporated there. Now in the bowl, we're going to put our dry ingredients. And I have measured 4 cups of an organic oat flour. So to make the cookies gluten-free, this is my favorite gluten-free flour, oat flour. Make sure it's organic, okay? And so unfortunately, they sometimes will spray rolled oats and the oat groat in the drying process. They spray the oats with glyphosate, which is a chemical, but they found that the chemical will help the grain dry faster. So it's detrimental to your health, but it gets the product on the market quicker. But the way that we avoid that is we get organic oat products. Oat flour has a nice moisture content, which is why I like to use it for my gluten-free recipes. It's not drying, and it's not refined process. It's the whole oat groat ground up into oat flour. Okay, so we got 4 cups in the bowl. We have 1 teaspoon of a non-aluminum baking powder. And then we have 1 teaspoon of a cinnamon and 1/2 teaspoon of ginger and 1/2 teaspoon of cloves. And that's going in there like so. And we'll just give that a light mix so the dry ingredients are all well incorporated. And then we're going to put the wet into the dry. And it's probably going to make a mess because you got all that liquid going. Okay, there we go like so. And when you combine the wet and the dry, do it all at once. Don't add a little bit of the wet, mix it, add a little bit of the wet, mix it. You want to add all of the wet together, okay? And the reason why I mentioned that is because, I've been teaching classes for a long, long time, and I had someone who was making a cake, and it didn't turn out for them, and upon talking to them and trying to figure out what went wrong, they took the wet ingredients and they slowly added it to the dry. So they added a little bit of wet mixed, a little bit of wet mixed. And so when you add a little bit of wet mixture to the dry mixture, a little bit at a time, you know what you create? You create cement, like hard as a rock cement. And we don't want that. We want a nice cookie dough. Now you make sure you get all of that out of the bottom because the thick molasses will stick. So make sure you get all that out of the food processor. You get all your good sweetness out of there. And then we mix this together. Okay, mixing it all together like so. Now we are going to put this dough into the refrigerator. Why are we going to do that? Because we want the cookie to be soft, okay? When you start with cold cookie dough and you put it into the oven, it tends to cook slower, and it creates a soft cookie. Plus, this dough, I'll show you, once it gets mixed together, is kind of wet dough. It's not very thick like a chocolate chip cookie thick dough, right? And so it's going to be a little thinner, but by putting it in the fridge, it will get a little bit thick. All right, so let me show you here. Okay, so you see how it falls off the spoon, like so. Okay, that's what you want. You want like a loose cookie dough, okay? Because we want a soft cookie, right? Just clean up some of this molasses stickiness. Move some of this aside here, okay? Get some of this out of the way. And I will show you, because of course I did some ahead of time, what it looks like after it's been in the fridge for a couple hours. Here's what it looks like. It's been in the fridge for a couple hours, and see, it doesn't fall off the spoon. It's definitely thicker, okay? So this batch is going to go in the fridge, and we're going to start with this cold batch of cookie dough. And we're going to put it on parchment paper. And I have this small cookie scoop because I'm going to make small cookies because I might want to give some of these cookies away as a gift. Okay, so I have a bowl of water, and this is my cookie scoop. Now, if you get the cookie scoop wet, like so, and then you take some of the cookie dough and go on the bowl like that, if you push it on the bowl, you're compacting it in, and then all of your cookies will be the same size. So they'll be pretty for Christmas, right? So there's a difference between pushing it on the side, and we have one level cookie scoop, right? So that's a nice cookie, as opposed to if you did this, that is not one level cookie scoop, right? That would be a big cookie. And if you wanted to make bigger cookies, you could. For Christmas, I always go with smaller sized ones, like I said, because I give them away as gifts. Or if you're going to serve them, you know, when you have a get-together or something, it's really nice to pick up small cookies, and you can just eat it, you know, probably like 2 bites, and that would be like it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this up and do them in there like so. Now, as they bake, they will spread out a little, but not very much. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the best kitchen tools there are, your hands, and I have my bowl here. Just get your hands wet, right? Take your fingers and just gently push down on the cookie. Not a lot, just a little bit, because like I said, they will spread out a little bit. And I found that if you don't push them down, then they're just not a good shape, okay? But so I just push them down with my fingers like that, and then you put them in a 350-degree oven. Make sure you preheat your oven first. They're going to take 10 to 12 minutes to cook. Not very long, because again, we want the cookie to be soft, right? So we pretend we've been in the oven for 10 to 12 minutes at 350 degrees, and here's what they look like. Yum. Okay, so let's look at size different comparison. After they cook up, they become much bigger, right? They're going to expand and become bigger like that. Now, they taste absolutely delicious, just like this, and you can have a ginger cookie, yum, that I love, or you can make the frosting to go on top of them, okay? So let's make the frosting. I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way, and we will make the frosting for these soft ginger cookies. Here we go. Okay. All right, so I've been creating recipes, like I said, for 27 years, and one of the most challenging things when you're vegan, organic, healthy, whole foods is frostings. Because what is frosting? Frosting is sugar and fat. sugar and fat. That's what frostings are, okay? So you need something that's thick for the fat, right? And you need something that's sweet. Now, these cookies were inspired by these cookies I used to make when I was a kid, and they were soft ginger cookies, and they had a white frosting, and that white frosting was powdered sugar, butter, and I think there might have been a little bit of milk. You just cream them together, but the frosting was white. Now, I haven't been able to achieve a white frosting, but it's kind of white, okay? It's like an off-white color. Okay, so again, you're going to need a food processor. I have a smaller one here. So what I'm going to do with the frosting is I'm going to start with a product called Sucanac, which is evaporated cane sugar, okay? So again, it's Christmas time, so I'm going a little sweeter than normal. Evaporated cane sugar is not as refined in process as white refined sugar, okay? It is brown in color. There is still some vitamins and minerals to it. The sugar has not been bleached, okay? And you want to go with an organic one, so you know there wasn't any chemicals used in the process, okay? So it's called Sucanac, S-U-C-A-N-A-T, Sucanac cane sugar. It's an organic cane sugar, and it's brown, and it's granule, but it is not brown sugar. Brown sugar is just white sugar with molasses on it, right? And we don't want that. We don't want to eat white sugar at all. So Sucanac is a brown sugar, but it's granulated. So I put 1/3 of a cup of the Sucanac into a food processor first. I use a smaller type food processor to make the frosting. Works out good. And then you take 1/3 of a cup of arrowroot. So arrowroot is your white powder. Usually I use this in a pie to help thicken the filling. You can also use this in gravies and puddings because it thickens things. But it also imitates powdered sugar because powdered sugar is white. Okay? So I have 1/3 of a cup of Sucanac and 1/3 of a cup of arrowroot. Okay? Now before I do anything else, I'm going to puree these two together because I will break up some of that brown granule Sucanac and I will incorporate it into the arrowroot. Okay? So first we'll do that. Okay. Now, you actually get a bonus recipe because that right there is powdered sugar. And so I use this for decorating cakes or things like that. But again, not that often, just for like special occasions. But if you need a powdered sugar, right there, Sucanac and arrowroot. That's what it is. It's powdered sugar. Okay. Now we are going to use fat. Okay. So I use a vegan butter. I use Earth Balance vegan buttery spread. Okay, so this is made with vegetable oils. Again, this is a thickening. The fat will help thicken it. Okay, so that's what I use, and I use 3 tablespoons. Okay, now you want this. You want this to be cold. Don't take it out of the fridge and have it get to room temperature. You want it to be still kind of hard. You want it to be cold, right? So we put it in there like so. I'm breaking it up into pieces. I think that helps incorporate it into the frosting, okay? So we put that in there and break it up into pieces like so. And then I have 2.5 teaspoons of a rice beverage. You can use your favorite non-dairy beverage. Do not go over 2.5 teaspoons, okay? It has to be 2.5 teaspoons. If you add too much liquid to this frosting recipe, you could ruin it. It's very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Picky, okay? If you add too much liquid, you could ruin this frosting. When I was creating this recipe, I had to do a lot of experimenting, and just a little bit more liquid completely ruins it. It becomes liquefied. It's not good. So you just want 2.5 teaspoons is what I've come up with as a good amount. Put it in there. All right, we're gonna puree this up now. This type of food processor, I have to keep my thumb on here in order for it to work. Now, I'm going to open it up and I'm going to look at it. I'm going to push the stuff down. It looks really good. It looks really good. It's very well incorporated. But I like to check it. I like to make sure, push everything down on the sides, make sure everything's in the middle, everything's going good, and we'll give it a little more puree. All right. That looks good. So like I said, it's not really white. Okay? But it gives you the imitation of that frosting that I remember as a kid that went on the ginger cookies that was made with powdered sugar. Now, what I do with this frosting, I put this in the refrigerator. I take it out of the bowl, put it in, another bowl, and put it in the fridge because it's going to frost better if it's cold. Okay, so I did that ahead of time. Here is our cold frosting. Okay. It's thicker than what we just created because you want to spread it on the cookies now. All right. So here are the cookies that came out of the oven. You also want the cookies to be room temperature before you put the frosting on it. You cannot spread the frosting on warm cookies. It will completely melt and go all over the cookie. So take some of the frosting and you frost it like so. Now, there is enough frosting to cover all of the cookies if you frost them nice and don't go overboard. Like that, okay? So you don't want to pile the frosting on because you have to be able to pick these up and eat them. Now, what I do is I frost all the cookies like so, and then I put them in the fridge. And then the frosting will set up even more. And then if I want to store them, I can, put them in a container. And then I can put a piece of parchment paper over the top as long as the frosting is cold. And then put another layer of cookies, right? And the frosting won't stick as long as the frosting is cold, okay? So again, you want to make sure that you frost the cookie with a nice amount. Don't go overboard. I taught how to make these cookies in a cooking class because this recipe is over 20 years old. And I remember in my cooking classes, I always let all my students participate. It's a hands-on experience, so they're a lot of fun. And I remember the students, when it came time to frost the cookies, and again, maybe because I've been doing this my whole life, and this is what I do for a living, I put a nice amount of frosting on. I had some students that literally went like this, and they put a ton of frosting on the cookie, like that. Well, I had to tell them, well, that's a little overboard, and you want the ratio of cookie and frosting. You don't want to overwhelm the taste of the cookie with too much frosting. And that's why it doesn't look like very much frosting right in this bowl, but like I said, I've made this recipe so many times, and it's in my holiday cookbook, that there is enough frosting to cover all the cookies that you're going to bake. Okay, just so you know. So this is, I would have to say, my favorite Christmas cookie right here. The soft ginger cookie with the icing. I make this every year. And I hope it becomes your favorite. And you start to make it every year. And it can become a holiday tradition for you also. Okay, so here are the cookies. I've frosted some of them, not really all of them. Let's take a bite. Let's see how it. Mmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. 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 Soft in the middle, icing on top. Mm. Mm. Oh, those are so good. All right, thank you so much for watching how to make my soft ginger cookies with icing. I hope you get a chance to make them. Make sure you go to macroval.com to check out all of my upcoming cooking classes. And I hope to see you in one of my upcoming classes. And for now, remember, get in the kitchen and cook healthy.